Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Buckle up, because this isn't just another courtroom story. This is what happens when betrayal, ego, and one miscalculated laugh meet their match. And it wasn't me they should have feared. It was the one I brought with me. They were already seated when I opened the door, laughing, smiling, her hand resting on his leg like they were sharing a private joke in a diner booth, not waiting for a judge to finalize the wreckage of our marriage. The court clerk barely glanced up when I stepped in, late, holding a folder in one hand and a storm in the other. No one stood. No one gasped. Yet. But Laurel, my wife, caught sight of who was beside me and flinched like she'd seen a ghost. And Chester, her so-called soulmate, went from smirk to suspicion in a heartbeat. They had no idea what was coming. And that's what made it so satisfying. Rewind 2 weeks. She thought I was out of town. I let her think that. I even packed a fake suitcase and left it in the car. What I actually did was borrow my friend's Jeep and park across from the courthouse, waiting, watching. I saw them walk in together that day, holding hands, dressed like two people proud of what they'd done. That was supposed to be the pretrial hearing. I didn't show up. On purpose. I wanted them confident, relaxed, drunk on the idea that I was defeated. Because I had something they didn't. The one person Laurel never wanted to be in the same room with again. She once called her the final nail in a memory I buried. Well, I dug it up. Because you don't get to torch someone's life and then walk into court like it's a brunch reservation. They thought I'd cry. I didn't. They thought I'd beg. I wouldn't. What I did bring with me was the reason their smiles disappeared the moment I walked in. And the moment the judge said, "Mr. D, you may proceed." I slid the folder across the table and let the courtroom burn. The silence in the courtroom after I slid that folder forward wasn't immediate. It rippled. First through the lawyers, then the clerk, and then straight to the judge, whose eyes lingered longer than I expected on the name typed across the top page. Laurel M. Delaney, affidavit of pattern deceit. Her attorney blinked twice, leaned in, and I swear I saw his jaw tighten. Chester leaned back in his chair like he was preparing to scoff, until he caught the name of the witness printed on the bottom right. That's when the blood drained from his face. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The woman standing beside me was already stepping forward. No dramatic entrance. No courtroom theatrics. Just calm, devastating certainty in every step. Laurel didn't look at her directly. She couldn't. She stared ahead, blinking too fast, like she was trying to slow time with her eyelids. "State your name for the court," the judge said. "Melanie Wilkes," she replied. It was like dropping a grenade on the entire room. Chester's chair creaked as he shifted uneasily. Laurel still hadn't moved. Her attorney whispered something, but she waved him off like she was trying to stay composed. But Melanie? Melanie wasn't there for closure. She was there to expose the architecture of lies Laurel had been building for over a decade. Not just with me, but with others before me, including Melanie's own brother. See, years ago, Laurel was engaged to someone else, someone she left, abruptly, with no warning, 2 weeks before the wedding. That someone was Melanie's brother, Christopher. At the time, Laurel vanished with a new guy, moved across state lines, and left nothing but an unsigned letter in his coat pocket. Melanie, a journalist by profession, dug into Laurel's past to protect her family from further damage. And what she uncovered, she kept. For years. Until I tracked her down using the faintest trail of old yearbooks, mutual college friends, and a comment Laurel once made when she was tipsy. "I hope I never run into Melanie Wilkes again." Guess what, sweetheart? You just did. And Melanie came armed. Emails, bank statements, testimonies from former friends, voice messages that reeked of manipulation and strategy. Laurel didn't fall out of love. She calculated exits like a contractor planning renovations. Chester wasn't her first. He was just the latest. And I wasn't her husband. I was her financial foundation while she hunted for upgrade options. The courtroom wasn't dramatic, not in the TV way. No gasps, no cries. Just the slow, humbling crush of realization on her face as each piece of evidence was validated. Her attorney stopped objecting after the second exhibit. Chester looked like he wanted to disappear into the wall. And me? I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, not saying a word, letting the truth do what my voice never could. Letting Laurel watch her carefully scripted performance fall apart in real time. When the judge called for a recess, Laurel bolted like someone fleeing a fire. She didn't look back. Not at me, Not at Melanie. Not even at Chester, who sat frozen in his chair like someone had just told him his identity was stolen and his face was on a wanted poster. I stayed seated for a moment. I wanted to watch her retreat. I wanted to see the cracks in her performance deepen with every step she took toward the hallway. That poise she always clung to. The way she used to look at me like I was a child who wouldn't understand her complex needs. It was gone. She wasn't untouchable anymore. She was cornered, and she knew it. Chester finally stood up, smoothed his tie, and tried to act like none of this bothered him. But then I saw him do something I'll never forget. He took out his phone, stepped into the far corner of the courtroom, and made a call, whispering, tense. At first, I didn't pay much attention, until Melanie nudged me gently and whispered, "You'll want to hear this." She'd already activated her voice recorder app on her phone and placed it down on the bench. I looked at her, confused, until she gestured toward Chester. That's when I realized he wasn't calling a lawyer. He was calling someone else. Someone familiar. Yeah, she's spiraling, he hissed into the phone. No, the witness? Some chick from 10 years ago. I told Laurel this was sloppy. She didn't prep. I'm not going down with her. No, listen, if the financial stuff comes out, we're both. He paused, looked around, lowered his voice. Then you need to move the funds. Now. Funds? My heart dropped. There was more. So much more. Chester wasn't just the affair partner. He was tied into something bigger, something Laurel didn't want anyone to see. And based on his panic, whatever they'd been doing behind my back didn't stop at betrayal. It went straight into fraud. Melanie caught my eye and whispered, "Wanna bet they've been draining your joint account?" The blood drained from my face. I'd stopped checking the joint account months ago, after Laurel insisted on managing things for both our sanity. She said money made me anxious and that she had systems that helped her feel in control. I thought I was being respectful, supportive. I was just being robbed. I left the courtroom mid-recess, walked straight into the hallway, and pulled up my banking app. The balance stared back at me like an accusation. A number so low I thought it was a mistake. But the withdrawals were real. Small amounts, spread across random vendors, travel agencies, beauty spas, some clothing brand I'd never heard of, and one label that made me feel physically sick. Hoffman Group Investment Transfers. Chester's last name. That's when everything shifted. This wasn't just about cheating. This was about being used. Hollowed out. Played like a background character in someone else's power fantasy. And I had let it happen. With a smile. With coffee. With love. The next move wasn't emotional. It was surgical. I stood outside the courthouse bathroom, my hands still trembling as I scrolled through the banking app. The list of withdrawals blurred together, each one a pinprick I hadn't felt until now. Plane tickets, boutique hotels, candlelit restaurants in cities I'd never visited. All this time, while I was grading student projects and eating leftovers, Laurel and Chester had been funding their fantasy with my paycheck. I felt pathetic, not just because I'd been fooled, but because deep down, I'd wanted to believe she was just confused or broken or temporarily lost. But no, she was organized, precise. She made betrayal into a spreadsheet. When I walked back into the courtroom, I wasn't the same man. Something in me had calcified. The ache was still there, but now it had sharp edges. Melanie saw it immediately. She raised an eyebrow like she already knew what I'd seen, then slipped a business card into my pocket. Call that number. Immediately after the hearing. I didn't ask questions. I just nodded. Back at the bench, Laurel was still gone, but Chester was seated again, scrolling through his phone with a furrowed brow. He didn't look smug anymore. He looked like a man watching dominoes fall faster than he could run. He didn't notice me at first. When he finally glanced up and saw me watching him, his face tightened, and he quickly turned the phone screen away. It didn't matter. I already had what I needed. The judge re-entered, and Laurel returned seconds later, her makeup freshly retouched, like she thought she could blush her way out of the mess she was in. Her lawyer leaned in and whispered something that made her blink hard. Probably about Melanie's testimony. Probably about the mounting evidence. Probably about the fact that the judge had already seen enough to know this wasn't going to be a normal divorce. But I wasn't done yet. When asked if I had anything else to present, I stood, my voice shaking just enough to remind everyone I was still human. "Your Honor," I began, "I've just discovered evidence suggesting financial misconduct involving shared marital assets." I respectfully request an emergency audit and freeze on all joint accounts pending investigation. My lawyer handed over the printed screenshots I just emailed him from the hallway. Laurel's smile evaporated. She turned to me sharply. That, how dare you, expression fully loaded. But the judge raised his hand to silence her before she could launch into her signature performance. Given the pattern of deception already established, he said, flipping through the papers, this motion is granted. The bang of the gavel wasn't just procedural. It was poetic. Laurel looked at Chester like he'd suddenly become radioactive. What did you do? She hissed. I heard it, even from across the room. He didn't answer, just stared down at his hands like maybe they'd start glowing with guilt. As the clerk announced the next steps, Melanie leaned toward me and whispered, She's unraveling faster than I thought. But be careful, cornered people do stupid things. She was right, because what Laurel did next wasn't just stupid. It was explosive. Laurel had always been calculated, but panic turned her into someone else entirely. The moment the judge granted the financial freeze, she lost all grip on her carefully curated image. Her eyes darted wildly from the judge to her lawyer to Chester, and then finally to me, like she was trying to find someone, anyone, who could stop the spiral. But no one moved. No one spoke. And that silence cracked something inside her. She stood up. Abruptly. Too fast. This is outrageous, she shouted. Her voice bounced off the courtroom walls like it didn't belong to her. He's manipulating this entire thing. You can't just freeze my life because he's bitter. Her attorney tugged at her sleeve, whispering fiercely, but she yanked her arm away like a teenager mid-meltdown. Do you even know who he brought in here? That woman is obsessed with me. She's had it out for me since. She stopped. Too late. The judge's expression hardened, unimpressed. Mrs. Delaney, sit down. But Laurel didn't. She kept going, unraveling in real time. They're ganging up on me. They've planned this. None of this is fair. Chester, tell them. Tell them we didn't do anything wrong. Chester didn't move. That was the moment that chilled me. The same man who had looked so proud walking into court beside her that morning now stared at the floor, refusing to meet her eyes. She reached for him, literally reached out, and he flinched. Like touching her would implicate him further. His loyalty dissolved in seconds, and she saw it. She saw it so clearly it almost made me pity her. Almost. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Delaney, I'm warning you. You will maintain composure, or I will hold you in contempt. Her mouth opened, but this time nothing came out. She sat back down, shaking, her shoulders rigid, her hands gripping the edge of the table like she might fall off the planet if she let go. When the court recessed again, Chester stood without a word and walked straight toward the hallway. Laurel turned, expecting him to wait. He didn't. She called after him in a voice so low it barely reached me. Chester, please don't leave me like this. He didn't even glance back. Outside the courtroom, Melanie and I stood near the vending machines. She was quiet, letting me absorb what had just happened. I stared at a row of soda cans like they held answers. I didn't think she'd crack that easily, I muttered. Melanie shrugged. She was never built for exposure. Her whole life runs on illusion and control. You took both away in an hour. That should have made me feel triumphant. But it didn't. It just made me feel tired. Because even if I was finally turning the tide, I still had to watch the woman I once loved become a stranger in front of strangers. And I still had no idea what else she'd done, what secrets hadn't yet surfaced. But that changed about 5 minutes later, when Chester's voice echoed from the hallway. I didn't see him, but I heard the words, sharp, regretful, and aimed into a phone call. I told her not to use my name on the wire transfers. If this gets traced back to me, I swear to God. He didn't realize I was standing just around the corner, listening. And what I heard next, it made me realize this story wasn't ending in divorce. It was about to end in criminal charges. I stayed frozen behind the wall for a few seconds longer, heart pounding like I'd sprinted there. Chester's voice, low and sharp, carried the kind of urgency people only use when they know time is slipping. No, I'm telling you, if the feds start sniffing around, I'm not protecting her. I told her to keep the shell accounts clean. A pause. No. If I go down for this, she's going down with me. I pressed record on my phone and captured the tail end of the conversation before his footsteps faded. He didn't even know I was 10 feet away. That 1-minute clip wouldn't hold up as evidence on its own, but it was enough. Enough to fuel suspicion, to prompt an audit, to expose a network of lies so intricate, even I hadn't realized how far it all went. Back in the courtroom, things were more subdued. Laurel was silent now, posture stiff, like a mannequin someone forgot to dress. Her lipstick was smudged. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked terrified. And somewhere deep inside, a small, pathetic part of me felt the echo of love I once had for her. But it was buried under too much wreckage. That version of her, the one I loved, had evaporated long ago. I handed my lawyer the audio recording. "Can we use this?" I whispered. He listened, eyes narrowing as he replayed it. "We can't present it directly yet," he said. "But we can reference it and request an official forensic audit." He was already preparing the motion before I could respond. When the judge returned, my lawyer stood and calmly requested an additional delay in proceedings to allow forensic experts access to both parties' financial histories. "There's credible concern regarding fraudulent behavior involving offshore transfers and laundering of marital funds," he said. The courtroom shifted. Even the clerk raised her head. Laurel's attorney stood, stammered something about needing to review the legitimacy of the claim, but the judge cut him off. "Given the volume of irregularities already documented, I am granting the request. Full transparency from both parties will be required." Laurel didn't look at me this time. She looked at Chester, eyes wide, blinking in rapid succession, like she was silently begging him to fix it. He wouldn't even meet her gaze. He just leaned back, arms folded, face pale and unreadable. I knew that look. He was preparing his exit. After court, I stepped outside to the kind of autumn wind that makes everything feel sharp. Melanie joined me. "So," she said, "you going to press charges when this is over?" I didn't answer right away. My instinct was to say no. I just wanted freedom, peace, closure. But peace doesn't come from silence. Not anymore. She was willing to let me take the fall, I said slowly. If I hadn't shown up, she would have walked away with everything. Melanie nodded. "Then don't let her." An hour later, I was on the phone with the Financial Crimes Unit. I submitted everything, screenshots, account numbers, statements, even Chester's recorded phone call. I didn't care about the consequences anymore. Not for them. For once, I cared about me. Because the man who walked into that courthouse late wasn't the same man who filed the complaint that day. I wasn't the doormat, the soft-spoken shell Laurel thought she could mold. I was done watching. And finally, I was ready to act. The following week moved like wet cement. Court was temporarily adjourned pending the forensic audit, but the damage was already spreading. Laurel went quiet, eerily so. No angry texts. No fake apologies. No threats. Just silence. But silence from someone like her? That's not surrender. That's strategy. I knew she was calculating, trying to salvage whatever could be salvaged before it all crumbled. What I didn't expect was who would try to jump ship first. Chester. It started with a phone call to my lawyer. Not mine, my lawyer's. He wanted to discuss a potential cooperation agreement. Translation, he was ready to flip. And I couldn't lie. When my attorney told me, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. Of course Chester would turn the moment the heat hit him. Laurel had chosen a man just like herself, loyal only to convenience. According to my lawyer, Chester offered to provide documentation, emails, screenshots, even wire transfer receipts, in exchange for immunity. He claimed he didn't know how deep the fraud went, that Laurel had roped him into it, and that he never touched the accounts directly. But his tone changed once he found out I wasn't interested in making deals. I wanted the truth on the record. Let the courts and investigators decide what came next. 2 days later, I received a call from a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Ellery." Laurel's voice came through, small and bitter. "I can't believe you actually called the authorities. You've ruined everything." I didn't say a word. She kept talking. "I know you think this is justice or whatever, but you don't understand what you're doing. You're tanking both of us. I can't protect you if you keep pushing this." That was when I finally broke my silence. "You stopped protecting me a long time ago, Laurel. Around the time you started funneling our money into fake companies and hotel weekends." She laughed, dry, broken. "You think Chester's going to take the fall for you? He's already trying to sell me out." "I know," I said. "He already called my lawyer." That shut her up. "You two deserve each other," I said quietly. "And whatever comes next, you earned it." Before she could reply, I hung up. But that call told me everything I needed to know. She was scared. Not of me. Not of losing the marriage. She was scared of the fallout, the real consequences she never thought would touch her. She thought I was too soft, too slow, too weak to ever stand up for myself. She was wrong. A few hours later, Melanie texted me. Check the courthouse bulletin. When I did, my jaw nearly hit the floor. Chester had officially filed a motion to be removed from the joint civil case and entered into separate mediation. That meant only one thing. He had fully turned on Laurel. Not just privately, legally. He was going to hand over everything. And Laurel? She was now standing alone, for the first time in her carefully constructed life. No fallback. No golden parachute. No backup plan. She'd spent years thinking she was the smartest person in every room. But now, she was about to learn what it felt like to be cornered with no one left to blame but herself. The final hearing was scheduled 3 weeks later, and I showed up early this time. Pressed shirt, calm expression, not because I wanted to prove anything to Laurel, but because I finally didn't care what she saw when she looked at me. I wasn't there to win. I had already won. This was just the closing credits. Laurel walked in looking nothing like the woman who once walked through our front door humming indie music and smelling like vanilla. Her face was pale, lips pressed into a nervous line. No makeup this time. No heels. Just flat shoes and a stiff blazer like she was dressed for a job interview she knew she wasn't getting. She didn't sit beside Chester. He wasn't there. He'd already submitted his deposition, fully cooperating with investigators. The records were undeniable. Tens of thousands in hidden withdrawals, diverted into shell companies, accounts in Chester's cousin's name, all orchestrated to quietly drain our savings while I was too wrapped up in keeping our marriage alive. The judge spent most of the hearing flipping through printed exhibits. Occasionally, he looked up at Laurel with quiet disapproval. When he finally spoke, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Mrs. Delaney, this court finds you liable for the unauthorized use of joint assets and deliberate financial deception during the course of your marriage. Full restitution will be required. She didn't object. She just sat there, blinking like someone trying to wake up from a bad dream. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't gloat. I didn't list everything she'd done or remind her of how many nights I sat awake wondering what I did wrong. I just said, Your Honor, I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to make sure this ends. And it did. The divorce was finalized. The court ordered a reimbursement plan. Her attempt to appeal was denied within a week. Chester was subpoenaed for a separate fraud investigation. And me? I walked out of that courtroom with something far better than a legal victory. Peace. A few months later, I moved out of state. Got a small place near the lake. Quiet. Simple. I teach pottery at a local center now. Still drink the same terrible gas station coffee. Still talk too much to my cat. Still write letters I never sent. But I'm not broken. Not anymore. I rebuilt. Without lies. Without games. Without her. And sometimes, when I look out over the lake, I wonder how long she'll keep spinning her version of the story. But then I remember, it doesn't matter anymore. Because she lost the one thing she never thought I had in me. The strength to walk away and never look back. If you've ever found yourself underestimated, betrayed, or silenced, remember this. Quiet people aren't weak. We just wait for the right moment to speak. You're watching Reddit Confessions. If you made it this far, drop a comment below about a moment in history when the quiet ones changed everything. We love hearing your stories, and who knows, yours might be our next episode. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more real stories that hit where it hurts and heal where it matters.